Hello, friends, and welcome to Wisdom and Wealth, your guide to navigating life's complexities with wisdom and financial insight. In today's video, we're diving deep into a mind-bending question: what if the universe doesn't actually exist in the way we think it does? We will explore this from a Buddhist perspective, specifically looking at the concept of impermanence and emptiness. It's a topic that might sound abstract, but it has profound implications for how we live our lives, especially as we mature and gain a deeper understanding of the world around us. Now, before we get started, if you find this kind of content thought-provoking and helpful, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to Wisdom and Wealth. Your support helps us create more content that delves into the big questions and offers practical wisdom for everyday living. Let's begin with Chapter 1, The Uncertainty of Existence. Is the universe even real? What does it truly mean for something to exist? We see the world, we hear sounds, we feel sensations. But what happens if we take a closer look? What if reality isn't quite what it appears to be on the surface? According to Buddhist teachings, everything we experience arises due to specific conditions. Take a tree, for example. It needs soil, water, sunlight, and air to survive and thrive. If any of these conditions change, the tree changes. If there's no water, the tree dies. If there's no sunlight, it can't grow properly. The tree isn't independent, its existence depends on a multitude of factors. This is the principle of dependent origination, or pratyaya samutpada, a fundamental concept in Buddhism. It essentially means that everything arises in dependence on other things, nothing exists entirely on its own. This concept is not just a philosophical point, but a practical guide to understanding the interconnectedness of everything around us. It invites us to see the world not as a collection of separate, isolated entities, but as a dynamic web of relationships. And remember to like and subscribe to our channel, Wisdom and Wealth, for more content like this. Now, let's consider how dependent origination applies to us. Think about your own body. You exist because your parents gave birth to you. You're alive because of the food you eat, the air you breathe, and the water you drink. Your thoughts and emotions are shaped by your experiences, your culture, and the people you interact with. Just like the tree, you are not independent. You exist because of countless conditions, a tapestry of interwoven causes and effects. This leads us to an even deeper insight: emptiness, or sunyata. If everything depends on something else, then nothing possesses a fixed, independent nature. Take a chair, for example. It's only a chair because we give it that name and assign it that function. Take it apart, and it becomes pieces of wood. Burn it, and it turns into ashes. There's nothing inherent in the chair that makes it permanently and undeniably a chair. This is emptiness. Things exist, but they don't have a solid, unchanging essence, and this concept also applies to our sense of self. We often believe we have a fixed identity, a permanent me. But is that really true? Compare yourself now to when you were a child. Are you the same person? Your body has changed, your thoughts are different, and your personality has evolved. There's no single, unchanging self. This concept is known as non-self, or anatta. Like the chair, we are a collection of changing parts, not a fixed, immutable identity. If everything is empty and dependent, what about the universe itself? If nothing has an independent existence, can we definitively say that the universe truly exists on its own? This question becomes even more intriguing when we consider modern physics. Scientists once believed that reality existed independently, regardless of whether we observed it or not. However, the famous double-slit experiment challenged this assumption. Scientists shot tiny particles, like electrons, at a barrier with two slits. When no one was measuring them, the particles acted like waves, creating an interference pattern. But when someone observed them, they behaved differently, as if they chose a path, a very strange phenomenon. This experiment suggests that, at a very basic level, reality seems to depend on whether we are observing it or not. This can bring up the question: does reality therefore, depend on perception? And if no one is observing, what happens? Buddhism approaches this differently. When the Buddha was asked about the universe's origin, he remained silent, not because he lacked knowledge, but because he saw the question as a distraction, as a rabbit hole we should avoid. He told the story of a man shot by a poisoned arrow. Instead of wasting time asking who shot it or what kind of wood the arrow was made of, the man should focus on removing the arrow and healing the wound. The Buddha focused on a more pressing question: how do we end suffering? But if existence itself is uncertain, how does that change the way we live? Imagine standing in front of a mirror in a dream. You see yourself, but the reflection isn't truly you, it's just an image, shaped by the dream itself. Similarly, if the world is constantly changing, then our thoughts, fears, and attachments are also fluid, and that those thoughts, fears, and attachments do not define us. This doesn't imply that life is unreal in a negative sense, but rather that our perception of life is often incomplete or distorted. But what if this impermanence, instead of being something to fear, is actually the key to freedom? If nothing is fixed, then suffering too is not permanent. And if the universe isn't what it seems, then what about us? What are we made of? If even our own sense of self is constantly changing, then what does that mean for the way we experience life, with all its joys and sorrows? Now, let's move on to Chapter 2, the fragile nature of reality. What are we made of? We often assume that the world around us is solid and real. The ground beneath our feet, the sky above us, our own thoughts and emotions, these all seem unquestionably real. But what if they are not as stable as we believe? Remember to like and subscribe to the Wisdom and Wealth channel. If the world is constantly shifting and impermanent, then what about us? Are we just part of this ever-changing illusion? A useful way to think about this is through the metaphor of a river. A river appears to be a single, continuous entity, but in reality, it's simply water flowing through a space. The water that you see one moment is gone the next, replaced by new water. The river exists, but it's never the same twice. In the same way, our bodies, thoughts, and emotions are constantly changing. The person you were 10 years ago, the way you looked, the way you thought, the things you loved, no longer exists. Even at this very moment, countless processes are happening inside you. Cells are dying and regenerating, thoughts are appearing and disappearing. So, if everything about us is changing, are we really the same person from one moment to the next? The Buddha once used the analogy of a chariot to explain this idea. In the Samyutta Nikaya, a king asks a monk, "Where is the chariot?" The monk points out that a chariot is made of wheels, an axle, a seat, and many other parts. But apart from these parts, where is the chariot itself? The chariot is just a name we give to a collection of things. This doesn't mean we don't exist at all. It simply means that what we call ourselves is not as solid as we assume. We are processes, not fixed entities. Throughout history, many thinkers have explored the idea that reality is not as stable as it seems. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." In other words, reality is not a fixed structure. It is shaped by our perceptions. What we consider real is influenced by our beliefs, language, and experiences. This aligns with the Buddhist concept of mental formations, sakra, the way our thoughts and perceptions construct our experience of reality. Two people can see the same situation in completely different ways, depending on their past experiences. Reality is not simply out there, it is also shaped by how we perceive it. Think about a time you misunderstood someone's intentions. Your initial perception created one reality, but when you learned more, your perception, and your reality, shifted. The philosopher Gilles Deleuze described reality as a flow of becoming. He argued that there are no fixed things, only constant transformation. This is very similar to the Buddhist concept of impermanence, anicca. Nothing stays the same, not even for a moment. If everything is in flux, then reality is not a single stable truth. It is an ongoing process. But if reality is just a process, not a fixed truth, what does that mean for our suffering? If everything is a process, then what does that mean for the way we experience joy, sorrow, love, and loss? Buddhism suggests that reality is neither completely real nor completely unreal. It exists, but not in the way we assume. The Heart Sutra, one of the most well-known Buddhist texts, states, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." At first, this may seem confusing. But it simply means that while things appear to exist, they do not have an independent, fixed nature. They arise due to conditions and disappear when those conditions change. This is the core of Nagarjuna's philosophy: everything is empty of inherent existence because everything depends on something else. A wave appears on the surface of the ocean, but it is not separate from the ocean itself. In the same way, we appear to be individual beings, but we are inseparable from the conditions that create us. So, if reality is neither something nor nothing, and if even our own sense of self is constantly changing, then what about our experience of suffering? Is it, too, just a temporary formation arising and passing away? Now let's think about Chapter 3, Does it matter if nothing truly exists? If everything is impermanent, interdependent, and ultimately empty, what does that mean for the meaning of life? It's a natural question to ask. The idea that nothing has a fixed essence can be unsettling. But rather than making life pointless, this understanding can make it even more precious. Imagine a sand mandala, carefully crafted by Tibetan monks, only to be swept away. Its impermanence doesn't make it worthless, it makes it beautiful. The same is true for life. If everything lasted forever, would we treasure it? Remember that you can like and subscribe to our channel, Wisdom and Wealth, for more content like this. A song is beautiful because each note fades. A sunset is breathtaking because it disappears. If life were eternal, it would lose its urgency, its depth. Impermanence isn't something to fear, but something to appreciate. It reminds us to be fully present. Buddhism teaches that everything matters because it's fleeting. But even if the universe is an illusion, one thing feels real: dukkha. Often translated as suffering, dukkha is deeper than just pain. It's the experience of dissatisfaction, the feeling that something is always missing. No matter what we achieve, it's never quite enough. We grasp at things, hoping they will bring lasting happiness, but they slip away. Why? Because we cling to things that are impermanent. We try to hold on to experiences, relationships, even our own sense of self, as if they were solid. But like trying to hold water, the tighter we grasp, the more they slip away. This clinging is a primary source of dukkha. The Buddha didn't focus on abstract questions about existence. Instead, he asked, how can we be free from this cycle of dissatisfaction? Whether the world is real or not, we all experience dukkha. And if it exists, doesn't it make sense to find a way out? The Buddha's answer was the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical guide to overcoming dukkha. The problem isn't that things are empty, but that we attach to them as if they were permanent. Like a mirage, dukkha grips us as long as we cling to illusions. When asked about reality, the Buddha often remained silent. He knew debating existence doesn't lead to liberation. Instead, he taught through direct experience. Observe the mind, see through illusions, let go. A Zen master once asked, "What did your face look like before you were born?" This isn't an intellectual question, but a gateway to realization. If we keep searching for intellectual answers, we remain trapped. If even dukkha arises from conditions, then it too must be impermanent. This is a beginning, not an end. It opens the possibility of transformation. So, how can we begin to apply this understanding to our own lives? How can we start to wake up from the illusion of a separate suffering self? Let's consider this in Chapter 4, How to Live If Reality is an Illusion. If everything is impermanent and empty of inherent existence, how should we live? The initial reaction might be fear, even nihilism. If nothing is truly real, what's the point? But Buddhism suggests a different path. If the self is an illusion, then so are the fear, anxiety, and suffering that come with it. The key is not to grasp at fixed meanings, but to embrace freedom by letting go. Letting go, however, is easier said than done. Imagine trying to hold smoke. The tighter you cling, the more it slips away. Clinging to ideas of existence or non-existence is similar, both are conceptual traps. True freedom comes not from answering the question of reality, but from realizing the question itself is unnecessary. The Buddha often discouraged speculative debates, not because they were uninteresting, but because they didn't lead to liberation. What matters isn't whether the universe exists, but how we relate to it, moment by moment. So, what does it mean to let go? It means releasing our attachment to thoughts, feelings, and experiences. It means recognizing that everything is constantly changing, and that trying to hold on to anything is like trying to hold water. For example, when we experience anger, instead of clinging to it, identifying with it, I am angry, we can simply observe it, anger is arising. This creates space, allowing the anger to pass without controlling us. Or, when we have a negative thought about ourselves, instead of believing it, I am a failure, we can recognize it as just a thought, a mental fabrication, and let it go. This leads to living fully in the present. Zen Buddhism expresses this beautifully: when hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. Life is to be lived, not endlessly analyzed. If we're not caught up in our thoughts about the past or worries about the future, we can be fully present with whatever is happening now. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent. It means we engage with life directly, without the filter of our judgments and expectations. One way to cultivate this presence is through practices like meditation and mindfulness. By training our attention to stay in the present moment, we learn to see things as they are, without getting carried away by our thoughts and emotions. But presence doesn't mean ignoring the beauty and richness of life. In fact, impermanence makes life more precious. A cherry blossom is beautiful because it falls. A song is meaningful because it ends. Rather than seeking permanence, we find depth in fleeting moments. If we don't cling, we are free to experience life with clarity and openness, appreciating each moment as it arises and passes. This path of awakening is not easy. The Buddha never promised that seeing through illusion would be effortless, only that it is possible. Letting go of attachments, cultivating presence, living with openness, these require consistent practice, patience, and a willingness to face our own minds. But the promise is profound: a life lived with less clinging, less fear, and more freedom. The invitation is not to believe in a particular worldview, but to wake up to the reality of our own experience right here, right now. So what if the universe doesn't actually exist in the way we think it does? What if it's all impermanent, interdependent, and ultimately empty? Throughout this video, we've explored this question from multiple angles. We've seen how Buddhism challenges our assumptions about reality, the self, and suffering. We've learned that everything arises due to conditions, that nothing has a fixed identity, and that even our own sense of self is constantly changing. But the point of all this isn't to arrive at a definitive answer about the universe's existence. The point is to transform our relationship with reality. Whether the universe is real or not, dukkha, the experience of dissatisfaction, is real. And the path to freedom from dukkha lies not in intellectual debate, but in direct experience. As the Buddha himself said, do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it. And remember to like and subscribe to our channel, Wisdom and Wealth. The invitation then is to practice, to observe your own mind, to see through your own illusions, and to let go of your own attachments. The path to awakening is not easy, but it is available to all of us right here, right now. It begins with a simple question and ends with a profound transformation. Thank you for joining us on Wisdom and Wealth. If you found this video insightful, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more content on wisdom and financial well-being. Until next time, take care and stay wise.